Hicks-Stearns Museum. Please come in. I'm B. White Ramirez. I'm the Executive Director of the Hicks-Stearns Museum. And for the season, we are decorated as the Victorians, roughly 1880s, would have decorated for Christmas. So please come join us. I've done some research on gift-giving ways and have come up so far with 19 different ways that Victorians during a certain time period like to give gifts. And the first one is in our family parlor called a fish pond. And our first gift giving away is an 1897 fish pond, where very simple, remember this is a time period with no batteries and no electricity and no plastic, is to simply take a stick and some string and either a hook or fashion one out of metal. And in a tub you have gifts that are wrapped in colorful paper. They had plain paper. It is not as easy as it might look. And you try to catch a present that would be on a string. And again, there was no printed paper, so they used plain brown paper or any color tissue paper. Red and green were not the only colors. Every color in the general Victorian time period meant Christmas. So that was a fun way for the family, friends, and relatives to get together, is the fish game. And our second gift giving way is a bauble, which is simply a very decorated ornament and that you would hang on the tree or put in an arrangement, and it would open up and reveal perhaps another little ornament or a present, a small sweet, that type of thing. So the second one is bauble. The third way that was discovered is the stockings were hung by the chimney with care. Back in this time period, stockings were not typical like we might imagine. These were actual stockings, not socks. Stockings came up over the knee for gentlemen and ladies. And this would have been a stocking that somebody would wear, put out for Santa to fill with presents, including the ever precious orange. And then you would empty it with the gifts from Santa and then put it back in your drawer and wear it again. And these happen to belong to Elizabeth, the last owner of the house, who was born in 1884. And the stockings were originally plain red and white, and either she or maybe one of her aunts or grandma did that beautiful, small, tiny embroidery on it for her. During this time period, as today, the time period between around Christmas and New Year's was very popular and very important, and lots of friends and families would be visiting. So I can show you two interesting amusements that were enjoyed by family and friends back in the time period. And one of them is just walnuts, which again certainly would be used for baking as today during the time period, and little trinkets would be put underneath and then moved around, and somebody would be able to pick one up, and there's a shell, and then the interpretation would say for next year that something or someone from the past would visit you in the coming year. And this one is another way, again, to tell fortunes. It's cast your fortune, and it would come with very small pieces of lead that a few pieces would be put into a spoon and held over a candle until they melted, immediately poured into water, which instantly seizes and makes a shape, and then it would be up to the person who poured it to see or interpret what shape they saw, and there's a whole list of possibilities of things that you could see from literally A to Z. But for instance, perhaps you saw a candle, so it said that your devotion to life burns and brings light. The fourth gift-giving way is the pillowcase Christmas from 1895, where, pretty obvious, A lady of the house got tired of just having presents and stockings, so she thought a better way would be to use pillowcases. And the same with the stockings, which were used, then put under the mantle or by the fireplace to be filled with presents. You would take a pillowcase off your bed, hang it up for Santa, and use it again. And we get quite a few children in school groups through, and I always tell them to ask their parents if they can switch out their modern stocking for a pillowcase and tell them that it's historically accurate. Then the parents can't refuse. And of course, back in this time period, all of the roped garland and the tree itself would be natural, but modern safety laws, we prefer to keep things artificial. But the fifth way of gift giving is actually on the tree. And for instance, if perhaps you painted and you knew that Aunt Sophronia was coming to visit, you could paint her a small picture and leave it on the tree, unwrapped, as a decoration. And then when Aunt Sophronia came to visit, which of course she would be during the holiday period, you would take it off the tree and give it to her. And of course she'd be delighted at your thoughtfulness. And we also have interesting decorations. Quite a few times there are decorations from a period book, and they don't necessarily say why they do it, but one of the favorites is the kissing chicken paper chains. And it gave us a pattern, but it didn't say why they like to put kissing chicken paper chains on the tree, as well as paper lizards that certainly children could make. They did have cardboard, and in the shape of a lizard again. The pattern was shown in a period book, but not the reason why. And it's covered with, they did have kind of the sparkly glitter, and this is sawdust. Again, very inexpensive and readily available materials that could be used, especially by children, to make ornaments to decorate the tree. Feather wreaths, of course, feathers, you could certainly just go outside all year long and collect feathers from birds and natural things like pine cones and a little bit of ribbon. But of course they did have beautiful, beautiful ornaments, glass ornaments from Germany. If ladies did any kind of lace work, so you'll see several pieces of lace. Again, same thing, that would be used as a decoration. And if it was something like a handkerchief, that could certainly, again, be given to Grandma when she came, if you did some lace work between all the other work that you had to do. And yes, they did light by candles, usually lit on Christmas Eve and a little bit on Christmas morning. And here is a stick. And an older child would be given the honor to stand by the bucket filled with water, and in case any candle decided to flare up, instead of, obviously, you don't want to blow it out, they could take the sponge, put it in the water, and very carefully put out that. And certainly at the end, when you need to extinguish all the candles, this was, oh. And the sixth gift-giving way, of course, is under the tree. So we just have an assortment of items from a lady's purse to definitely gentleman or boy, appropriate for the time period or what they thought was appropriate. Certainly gentlemen could be playing marbles, because that would mean getting on the ground, and ladies, of course, that would not be considered appropriate. And things for girls, of course, were smaller items of larger items that you'd be using for real when you were old enough, such as a wooden ringer, and of course dolls. continue on now to the dining room. And here we are in our dining room, where the seventh gift giving way is on the table. Another way is from 1899, the bran pie. And bran back then meant any type of grain, but sawdust, again, because it was cheap and available, was often substituted. And it basically said just take a nice brown pottery pie dish, and somebody, usually the lady of the house, maybe mom or grandmom, older sister, would hide small things in here, perhaps a small bag of marbles for a gentleman or little boy, and a charm bracelet perhaps for grandma or mom. And everybody at the end of dinner would be able to take a scoop of the sawdust and see if they found something like the little charm for a charm bracelet, and they would think it would be oh so very amusing if perhaps your Uncle Thomas got the charm for the charm bracelet, and again Aunt Sophronia if she got the bag of marbles, and everybody would chuckle and guffaw, and then of course they would exchange gifts for what was appropriate. And a slight variation on that was called the Christmas pie, where again just any kind of deep container would have presents tied to the end of different colored ribbons, and then it would be covered with brown paper to simulate a pie crust. And this time, whoever set it up would know that Uncle George would get the blue ribbon, and so when everybody pulled it at the same time, Uncle George would get the cufflinks, Aunt Sophronia would be red, and she would get that little charm for the charm bracelet. So basically two variations on a theme between the bran pie and the Christmas pie. We are fortunate at the Hicks-Stearns Museum to have somebody donate several of the outfits, which were real, for roughly, again, the 1880 to 1890 time period. These were owned by the same woman, and they are a little bit more petite in stature in general, and certainly have a smaller waist due to that ever-constricting corset, which in general young girls would be using starting about age 13. Is when they wear their first corset in general, and that basically kind of like braces to the teeth, gently makes your rib cage kind of go a little bit collapsed and gives that, at the time, desired small waistline. But this is silk and this is velvet. So let's take a walk out to the sun porch and discover 3 more gift giving ways. This way, please. So gift giving way number 10 is called a balmy ballin, and basically it is crepe paper wrapped into a ball, very popular in Europe, perhaps brought over to England from Germany when Prince Albert married Queen Victoria, and then of course we in the United States like to emulate what they did in England, so adopted it here. And basically you would crack this open and unroll hundreds of feet of the crepe paper to again find little trinkets. And perhaps it would be a small book, or again, maybe a charm for a charm bracelet for a lady, or perhaps some cufflinks for a gentleman. And along the same lines, number 11 is the Wonder Ball. Everybody back in this time period would have a grandma or an aunt or a mom who sewed or knit. So you would take a ball of yarn and totally unroll it and add some things such as, again, a charm for a charm bracelet, some pins, etc. And then after you added all the little gifts and trinkets, you would wind it up and give it to grandma. So as she knit you perhaps some winter mittens, she would knit and unroll and gather all her trinkets. So gift giving way number 12 is the Rainbow Christmas from the Ladies' Home Journal in 1897. And it said a Mrs. Scoville was tiring of the usual way to give gifts, and she was reminded of the old saying, at the end of the rainbow, you find buried treasure, so she hung her treasure. And again, noting that any color was Christmas, it didn't just have to be red and green. And this could be set up a week or so before Christmas, and you would not necessarily know which of these very interesting looking bundles was yours. So it'd be a little bit of a kind of an excitement of wondering which one was yours and then what was in it. And now let's go into the old kitchen. Gift giving way number 13 is a soap bubble party, where you would take a container and fill it with, they said Castile soap, of course we would know, would make the best bubbles, and you would have a clay pipe, everybody one per person, and there would be, of course, prizes, small prizes. It wasn't the dollar amount, it was the thought that counted, and just the camaraderie of all doing this together. Who blew the biggest bubble, whose bubble lasted the longest, who was able to blow the most bubbles with one turn, and again, just another interesting way to give gifts. Gift giving way number 14 is the Victorian Christmas piñata, differently shaped. It was supposed to be shaped like a boot, and played the same way, where children would be blindfolded and given a stick, and they would be able to hit it, and eventually it would crack open and all the small packages of candies would come out. Our next gift-giving way is a plant. The Victorians in general like moralizing, uplifting stories. So this one goes that somebody donated a poinsettia plant to a down-and-out family who put it in their window, and they noticed the plant wasn't getting enough light, so they cleaned their windows, and because of that they noticed that their floor and rugs were dirty, so they cleaned those, and because of all of that they became more upstanding, productive members of society, all because somebody bestowed upon them a Christmas plant. Gift giving way number 16 is the auction hunt. And basically, again, the lady of the house would set this up with a small container, a basket perhaps, filled with either dried corn or dried beans. And she would wrap up various and sundry items, and nobody would know what was in them. And everybody would get the same amount of beans or corn in their basket. And the lady of the house would be like the auctioneer and say, I wonder what's in this, and it's a bit heavy. Oh, and it has a lovely aroma. Who will bid 5 beans on this? And then there would be a back and forth, and again, whoever bid the most beans would take them out of their basket, and they would get the prize. And it would continue on to say again, what an interesting shape, I wonder what this could be. So very simple, but again, it was mostly about the camaraderie and the friendship and the community of gift giving. And gift giving way number 17 is the peanut hunt from 1896. It said give everybody participating, and this could be children or adults, a paper bag, and beforehand, again, the lady of the house would have wrapped peanuts still in the shell in either green, it said, or rose-colored paper, and hide them all around the house. At the start of the game, it said to use the horn and blow a little bit of a musical note, and everybody would go scurrying off to collect all their green and red peanuts, and there would be a prize for who filled their paper bag first, who had more green peanuts, who had more pink peanuts, and again, it was just the camaraderie of doing it together. The prizes weren't necessarily anything big monetarily wise, but it was just a fun and, again, inexpensive game, and the best thing is, once you peel the paper off and you crack the peanut shell, you could throw them in the fire, and very little mess to the game. Now that was the peanut hunt, and over here is the 1892 Yule Lap, where it would say to take a small gift, and again we're just using a charm bracelet for a lady, and it would say to wrap it in fringed paper and to put that into a box, cover that with plain brown paper, cover that with strips of cloth that then you would bake with a simple flour and water mixture in the oven. Once it came out and was cool, it said to pin it into a napkin or a handkerchief, and then finally wrap it, it said, with either white yarn or string in white paper. So to get the gift, you would take off the string or yarn. You would rip open the paper. You would unpin it from the napkin or the handkerchief. You would break it open from the baked bread. You would peel off the strips of cloth. You would rip or tear the plain brown paper. You would open the box. You would unfold the fringed tissue paper, and you would get your charm for your charm bracelet. Again, nothing big necessarily monetarily wise, but you'd be really grateful that somebody thought enough of you to take the time to do such an interesting way to give a gift. Now let's go look at our 19th and final gift giving way. And perhaps one of the most popular gift giving ways is our cobweb party from 1876. And it would say, again, usually the lady of the house, mom, grandma, older sister, aunt, would set this up perhaps even a week up to or before Christmas. And only the person who set it up would know what color each person was. So it's said to take a different color yarn for each person in the household, and we have 4 in here. And the lady of the house would tie presents that are appropriate to that person on each person's color. And then when it was finally time to play, and of course you'd be wandering by and wondering, first of all, you don't know what color yarn you are, but you might want to, like, that looks like a very interesting present, so maybe you were hoping that you were the blue to get that present. And when it was time to actually play, everybody would take the end of their yarn and start rolling it up, and of course they'd have to have step stools, etc., to reach all the way up to the top and down, and everybody would be weaving in and out of each other and having a great time, because as you roll this up, you would be able to take and get your present, and at the end, this would be all cleaned up, and then everybody could open their presents. Well, that's the end of our 19 gift giving ways. We will be open for the season next May, and we invite you to come back and visit. The house is just as beautiful without all the decorations up for Christmas. We are usually open on Sundays from May through October, also by appointment, and we are also available for school and youth group and adult and tours and meetings and small weddings, etc. So we hope that you please come and join us and visit us next year. Thank you so much.